I'm going to read I can't speak as well or make phrases as well as this writer, so I'm going to quote from this brief article about Paola Antonelli as a beginning to her introduction. Paola Antonelli, curator of the Department of Architecture and Design at the Museum of Modern Art, is the high priestess of contemporary design, holding forth on everything from folding chairs to fashion. With her ebullient dolce vita, is that flair, Antonelli follows in a long line of charismatic New York museum curators. That includes Frank O'Hara, Bernard Rudolphski, and Henry Geltzoller. Passionate about her work, she is always seeking and usually finding the next great thing. But in these hyper-design conscious times, being Paola Antonelli is such an awesome responsibility that she can't even disclose what task chair she sits on, lest her choice be construed as a commercial endorsement. Paola Antonelli joined the Museum of Modern Art in February of 1994 and is the hottest curator in the Department of Architecture and Design. That's mine. Her first acclaimed exhibition for MoMA, Mutant Materials in Contemporary Design, 1995, was followed by Threshold's Contemporary Design from the Netherlands in 1996, Achille Castiglione Design, 1997-98, and Project 66, Campagna Ingo Mauer, 1999. Open Ends and Matter, September 2000 through February of 2001. Her last exhibition, which just was concluded, Workspheres, ran from February 8th to April 22nd this year. Paola is a recipient of a master's degree in architecture from the Polytechnic of Milan in 1990. Paola Antonelli has curated several architecture and design exhibitions in Italy, France, and Japan. She has been a contributing editor for Domus magazine 1987 to 1991 and the design editor of Abitare 1992 through 1994. She has also contributed articles to several publications, among them Metropolis, ID, Paper, Metropolitan Home, Harper's Bazaar, and Nest. From 1991 through 1993, Paola Antonelli was a faculty member in our UCLA Department of Design. That's our connection here, where she taught design theory and theory. She has design history and theory, I'm sorry. She has served on several international architecture and design juries. Paola Antonelli, whose goal is to make design the most loved, understood, and celebrated discipline of the 21st century, is currently working on a book about foods from all over the world as examples of outstanding design. She is also trying to get a Boeing 747 into the collection of the Museum of Modern Art. That's me. How is that going?
It's pretty good.
So, without any further ado, may I present Paola Antonelli.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss. Wow, this was quite a great presentation. Am I on? It's not that it's, oh, great. It was quite a great presentation. I really thank you, Miss. It's quite amazing to be here. First of all, people that I haven't seen in almost 10 years haven't changed a bit. Roma is exactly the same little girl that she was 10 years ago. That's just everybody. And it's quite moving. Also, it was a little difficult to find my way to get today to Dixon because the whole campus is under construction, but things seems to be, everything seems to be really in good shape, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you. And I would like to make tonight's conversation really into a conversation and make it quite informal. I'm going to talk to you about my last exhibition, Workspheres, and through that exhibition, just talk to you about my work and answer your questions if you have any about the exhibition, about the work, about New York. I mean, I can tell you about the favorite restaurants on the side, maybe after the lecture, but really feel free to ask the questions that you might want to ask. You know, no problem whatsoever. Workspheres is the last exhibition in a crowded series, and but in a way it follows onto the steps of all the other exhibitions. When I went to MoMA in '94, it was quite easy to find my role there because I immediately saw that there was a gap in people's preparation about design in New York City and a little bit in the United States, but I could really see it there. And you know that when you have some gap to fill, your mission is clear and your job is much easier in a way. What I noticed right away is that design always needs to have a crutch of some kind in people's minds. It either needs to be attached to art so that people can understand what it means by thinking of art, or it needs to be attached to decoration and the decorative arts, or it needs to be attached to engineering. There was no way that people were able to understand when I said design what I really meant. And you know, here I'm in a design school, so you know it, but in that case I noticed that I had to find the right drawer, build a new drawer for the dress, or the cultural dress that the people had, and a drawer devoted to design. You know, I'm in a department of architecture and design within a museum of art, and a big museum of art. And clearly, the museum was built around the Department of Painting and Sculpture, and that's just fine. And it's also to my big advantage to be there because 80%, 75% of the people that come to see my shows are there to see Matisse and Picasso, and they stumble upon my shows, and I have to keep them there and tell them the story that I want. So I always considered it an absolute, a precious prerogative to be at the Museum of Modern Art, not only because I think it's the best museum in the world, but also because it was a big advantage to have the other fields that are already considered by everybody like vitamins that you have to take every day. Like you have to take your Matisse Picasso pills, and even your architecture pills, you know. Architecture pills work. Design pills are still like not approved by the FDA in a way. So I was like seeking for the approval there. So my idea was that no matter what, I would always cherish that final motto to make design the most loved and cherished discipline, field, study, passion of the 21st century. And I set out that way. My personal passion is contemporary design. I've been teaching history and I've studied the history of design. And also, as you know, I have an architectural background, so I'm always interested in the process. It's not only an aesthetic judgment or an aesthetic consideration that I give objects, but it's always a reasoning about the way they were made and why they were made. And it's a true passion in thinking why something was made that way. For instance, that's what makes me think of the Post-it as one of the masterpieces of design. If you consider it only from an aesthetic value, it's a yellow square. You know, the first one was yellow and square. So it's just a yellow square. But if you think more about it, if you think about the myth that says that it was discovered by mistake. You know the story, I'm sure. It's this engineer at 3M that was checking, you know, trying to come out with a new adhesive, and did this adhesive that didn't stick permanently and thought it was really a drag, and instead then thought about it together with another colleague and realized that he had made one of the best discoveries of the century. But it's also that the yellow is the color of alert. It's square, therefore there's a certain balance to the containment of thought. It sticks onto everything. In a way, it transformed our fridge door into a hypertext panel before hypertext was available to everybody. I mean, it's really an enormous backstory that it has. Plus, it has an enormous forward story if you consider that it's cheap and therefore available to everybody, and that it's really going to have a staying power for a very long time, virtually, if not physically. We know already that we have our Post-it notes on the computer in the Post-it program. So this is just to give you an example. The first exhibition was therefore a way to explain to an audience as wide as possible how great contemporary design is. And it was called Mutant Materials in Contemporary Design. It was a display of interesting objects from all over the world that was shown via the way they're made, with the materials, with the molds, with the process. And what was also interesting is that, as I told you, I have to keep people there, so I always have to look for stratagems in exhibitions. Well, the stratagem in that case was that 70% of the objects in the show were touchable, so people could touch them, which is not something that you normally do in shows at the Museum of Modern Art. So that proved to be a pleasant surprise that made the show successful. What I'm talking to you today is Workspheres, not Mutant Materials, but I wanted to tell you the beginning so that I can tell you about the last exhibition. After 7 years at the Museum of Modern Art, and after having done about 6 shows that were all based on things that already exist, I decided that I wanted to, you have to make your job interesting too, so I wanted to do something that did not exist yet. I wanted to try my hand at commissioning work. And I had already quite a few precedents to look at the Museum of Modern Art. MoMA was founded in 1929. In particular, the Department of Architecture and Design, which was founded by Philip Johnson, had its first exhibition in 1931, which was the famous International Style exhibition about modernist architecture. And the first design show, instead, was in 1934, and it was called Machine Art. You know it. It was the one with the ball bearing on the cover of the catalog that showed propeller blades and ball bearings and cruets and all kinds of machineries seen as beautiful art objects. When the war happened, when Second World War happened, all of a sudden the whole world of architecture and design kind of became conscious about a new shortening in resources and about a new condition that affected design immediately, because design is a byproduct of industry. So if industry is taken over by an interest or by a different concern, then also design is taken over by that. And the design curators curated a series of exhibitions about objects that were under $1, under $5, really concerned about economy. And at the end of the war, in 1948, they launched a competition among some of the best designers in the world for low-cost furniture. Basically, they asked the best designers in the world to design for the GIs that were coming back from the war, that had a bill that enabled them to go back to school and learn a trade that would make them jump from the lower middle class to the middle class. So MoMA used its own authority and power to better the world, to improve the world. I wanted to try and do the same. And I wanted to try and do the same today. Now today, we don't have the same kind of concerns. And in a way, I didn't feel that I would be able to really act on the major problems in the world. I felt that what designers could work on today was some problems that were at hand in our society, in our first world society. And I started to think of what was feasible and what was really important. And I thought that one of the most important things in our lives is the balance between our work life and our non-work life. Not really the office space, but more the balance between work and non-work. And I'm going to show you what happened of these thoughts. It's the exhibition Workspheres. The exhibition Workspheres that, as Mitz said, just closed April 22nd. The exhibition was based on a consideration about the way we live today, and also of all the stereotypes that have come out by the study of the way we work. I started thinking of this exhibition about 4 years ago, I think. And one immediate reaction that I had is that I hated the subject. If you think about it, there's nothing as dreadful and boring as office design, from an architectural standpoint and from a furniture standpoint. It was really deadly boring. And I started reading all these articles that said that in the future we will work in our pajamas, that we will never have an office anymore, that we will still have an office. There were all these theories that were thrown on the table, but usually dropped from above. Very rarely were they the result of a survey among various people. But so when I saw that the subject was so unbecoming, that was so not attractive to me, I decided that I was going in the right direction. That if it was so not attractive, I better work on it harder. So while I was trying to make other exhibitions as excuses not to tackle really this one, I was preparing the studies, the research for this exhibition. Now, my way to do research for an exhibition is quite chaotic but organized, which is, remember this, chaotic but organized, which was also one of the tenets of Workspheres. what I do is I look at all the magazines, I read a lot, cut out articles. It's more for the act of cutting out. Sometimes it's not even about reading them or quoting them, but it's the cutting out that really sediments something in your psychology, in your psyche. And then I also send spam emails to everybody I know saying, I'm about to do this exhibition. Have you done something? Have you seen something? Has any of your students done something? You know, so I get back rivers, torrents of material, and then I sift through it. And through this act through this initial chaos comes the Big Bang somehow, you know? And the Big Bang was, I need help. And so I put together a board of advisors. That's what you do when you're in trouble and when you need help. And usually you choose the board of advisors by selecting people that are able to do very well what you're really bad at. So I picked 4 people. One was Larry Keeley, who's the head of the Dublin Group, a strategy consultant in Chicago. Jay Dublin was a great consultant that specialized in design, and Larry Keeley is the person that he endowed with his legacy. And he's a great person, great human being, great thinker, really good at thinking rationally, which I am really bad at. And he knows everything about business and economy, so about the impact of new design on the office structure and on the macroeconomic picture. The second person was Aura Oslapas, a real designer and a behavioral designer from San Francisco, somebody who's been really, who's really experienced in looking at how people live, work, eat, sleep, and making that become a design strategy. The third person is John Thakara, who's the director of Doors of Perception. You might know the conference in Amsterdam that happens every year. And the reason why I chose him is because he's very good in conjugating the virtual world or the computer world and the real three-dimensional design. So very good at helping with those issues. The fourth person is Bruce Mao, who's a graphic designer, thinker, and strategy designer from Toronto, who has been chosen because he makes me think very well, because I have really great conversations with him. And so with this group of 4 people, we started sifting through the material and also trying to think of what the problems are for people who work today. And we set the ground. You know, what you do at the beginning of an exhibition is you try to set the limits. And that's what you do in any project, in a way. It's what makes the project more efficient and stronger, by knowing what your limits are. So the first limit was out of something that I said. I don't believe that designers can change the world. I believe that revolutions happen also because of design for many different reasons that we're not completely privy to. And they happen, and what designers do, which is very important, is they make these revolutions approachable, understandable, manageable, digestible by people all over the world. So with that said, we started looking at the revolution that had happened, which of course you know about. It's the revolution that has been brought about by the use of computers and especially of wireless and portable devices. The fact that, one cliche to give you at the beginning, work is everywhere today. You know, that is one cliche that I saw so many times, and it's even true. So that was the biggest deal that we found. And we started looking at all different case studies, and we started making a list of problems that could be solved by means of design. And you'll see that in the end, some of these problems were given as briefings to a group of designers, actually 6 designers. And the number 6 comes from the fact that I divided the budget that I had and saw that I could have 6 commissions. It's very pragmatic sometimes. Anyway, let me walk you through the exhibition so you'll see that all these issues will come up as we talk about the show itself. First cliche about offices today, offices that are places where people live 24/7, play ping pong, sleep under their desks. It's like, this is the Japanese version of the Palo Alto idea, of the Silicon Valley idea of the workspace as something where you go with a bicycle and you hang it on the ceiling, and it becomes both a playful and an all-devouring space. This comes from a catalog that is almost like the Japanese IKEA. It's a company called Garage. Second cliche is that the lone cowboy on his horse with the wireless computer. You know, we go to the other extreme. You know, that's this kind of idyllic view of the future. Huh? All right, I'll try. Yeah, oops. Doesn't seem to want to stay in focus, okay. And the middle is reality in a way. This is the image that I chose as a symbol of the exhibition. This was taken by a Dutch guy. It's his girlfriend, and she was really there in the parking lot minding her own business. And as you can tell, she's perfectly content with her workspace. It's her own bubble. It's her own worksphere. That's why the exhibition was called Workspheres, because really work can be wherever you are, it's true. But it doesn't even need to have a wireless device. In a way, because of the fact that we can work with our computer everywhere, we've trained ourselves to work on demand, and I'm saying it positively, not negatively, wherever we are, and work becomes just a pure state of mind, of concentration, of focus, of thinking of the work instead of thinking of something else. There's a bubble around this girl, and there's a bubble around us when we're sitting in front of Perloff Hall on the lawn, thinking of our own business and writing on a notepad or without a notepad. In a way, it's about looking at the field, the magnetic field around a person. I'm sorry if I'm getting a little new agey. And looking at the interactions of these magnetic fields as a new diagram for understanding how people work and live. The exhibition became then a gathering of various types of contemporary work in the first world, white-collar, knowledge workers, as you want to call them. That was a second big problem. Definitions, a glossary of terms for the exhibition proved to be very difficult. Any kind of definition of work today is lacking, is imprecise, and is not satisfying. Knowledge worker doesn't mean a thing. A craftsman has much more knowledge than a clerk sometimes, or vice versa. It doesn't mean a thing. It's not about that. And somebody who has a farm can be working on a computer a lot and therefore become a knowledge worker by that definition also. So it was kind of difficult to set a few bylines and a few limits for the exhibition itself. But what I did is I sifted through all the material that I had received and made an exhibition that had 6 main commissions that you see, plus a big number of prototypes and also a big number of products already on the market. It was important, in my opinion, to show also what's already on the market because, you know, that's another of the marvels of design. It takes so much to go from the idea to the product. You know, it's kind of easy to have a good idea. Well, you got to be talented, but let's say you're talented, it's kind of easy to have a good idea. It's kind of easy to make the prototype. What's really difficult is to make the investment, the tooling investment, the marketing investment that brings that idea to reality. You have to go through so many different compromises and fine-tune it so many times that if in the end you still have that great idea, that means the job has been done really well. So I wanted to show also various examples of products that have made it on the market. This was the entrance of the exhibition. This is the ground floor of MoMA. And one smart thing to do every time you have an exhibition, as I told you, is to have something that really attracts people. Mutant Materials was the fact that you could touch things. In this case, I had Maximog. The Maximog is this vehicle that Brand Farren designed and produced for himself. Brand Farren is a great friend, one of the funniest people in the world, and also, I don't know how to say, a great inventor, engineer, designer. He used to have a company in New York that was doing all kinds of special effects and staging for Broadway shows. Then he came to Disney Imagineering, where he's been the president. He was the president of research and development for 7 years. And recently he left Disney and opened his own company called Applied Minds, together with Danny Hill. You probably have heard these names before. And what they do is they do consulting for impossible projects. Well, we don't really know what they do, but we're sure they're doing something really good and special. But, but what Brand started out by doing for himself is this vehicle, which I wanted in the exhibition, both as an attraction for all male individuals in New York City, but also because it's the ultimate Bedouin, the ultimate nomadic workplace, in a way. He took the chassis of a Mercedes Unimog and transformed it according to his own desire, as he pleased, into this thing called Maximog. This is the main vehicle, and the one you see on the right is the trailer that goes behind it. Basically, this is a vehicle with which Bran will go everywhere he wants, exploring. He has 2 telescopic arms in the back, one with the camera shooting up about 15 meters. That makes it about 35 feet. Yeah, 36 feet up. And another one shooting up 20 feet up with a little seat, so you can look above the trees if you're in the jungle and see whatever is happening. He has a remote-controlled airplane that Paul Macready from JPL built for him, with a camera also, so he can fly it around, just make sure, if he's in New Guinea, wherever he is, make sure that everything is fine. And the trailer is all made of fiberglass, and it's a parallelepiped that, once in position, has a roof that lifts and makes the loft bedroom more comfortable, and then 2 wings that open, and one is the bathroom and the other one is the kitchen. So it's this amazing, everybody's dream of, monster truck with trailer. So it's just a great vehicle that also had a website that was connected. It got so many hits. But it was the beginning of the exhibition. And I can tell you, it took 12 hours to get it into MoMA one night through the loading dock. And so we decided that it would go out the main door. So that's what we did. 12 hours to bring it in, 1 hour to get it out. We just, we took out one of the glass doors and steel doors of MoMA in the front, and the truck came out. It was quite a dramatic exit. It was more of a dramatic entrance, but we won't tell the public. And upstairs, you would climb upstairs to the 2nd floor of MoMA, and there the exhibition would start with 2 commissions. As I told you, we did with the advisors and also with all the other people that I was talking with, we did, you can call it a cahier de doléances, but a shopping list of problems. And some of these problems you'll find very familiar to you. One of the biggest problems that I have and that many people have is flexibility, especially when it comes to taking a nap. Now, you might say that I'm still very Italian, but I find it very efficient for work, productively speaking also, to take a nap after lunch if necessary, or just during the day at some point be able to just doze off for a few minutes in order to be more awake afterwards. But it's very often impossible. And so I decided that we needed to commission a capsule, something that could be dropped into any office, a box that could be dropped into any office where people could not only take a nap, but maybe also not see their co-workers for a brief length of time, either work intensely by themselves or listen to music if they needed to, or take a nap. And at that point, we picked the designers. That's another thing that's important. I picked the designers after choosing the problem, so the designers were kind of fit to the problem somehow. On the left of the screen, you see the result of the commission that was given to Low-Tech. I don't know if you've ever heard of Low-Tech. It's a company in New York, an architectural company in New York. They're actually 2 Neapolitans, and they have become really well known for being good at recycling containers of various kinds. They had the first exhibition that I saw of theirs was many years ago, and they were recycling at that point plastic bottles and making them into lamps. And then they got into bigger containers, and another great exhibition that they did at Jeffrey Deitch Projects was called TV Tank. They had taken a gas tank, the ones that go on the freeway, sliced it as if it were many calamari rings, and then each of these rings would be padded and equipped with equipment, TV, video games, and it would become just this great, comfortable, I don't know how to say, not a treehouse, but just a place where you really feel that you're in your own space, very comfortable and playful. And then they took a concrete mixer and made it into another play space. So they're really good at doing this. They also had an exhibition here at the Arm & Hammer Museum, I think. They did an installation for the Hammer Museum, so you might have seen their work there. I told them, I want you to design a place where people can be by themselves, not see their coworkers, take a nap, listen to music, do work, whatever, that doesn't cost more than $2,000. No more than $2,000, better if less. And what they did is they took one of the cargo containers that you see on the tarmac of all airports and didn't make too many variations, too many modifications to it. This door that you see on this side is already in the container. That's how you feed all the luggage into the container. What they did for this presentation is they cut this part of the container so that it's hinged and it can open. Therefore, it makes the box, which is called Inspirotainer, it makes it much more flexible. They had a great video that they were showing at the exhibition. They also thought that you could have a meeting of 2 or 3 or 4 of these containers and have like a small and secluded conference room. And then you can pull the lid down and you have still a plexiglass screen, so you can show what you're doing from the inside. There's a screen, the computer screen can be projected, so you can show your work on the outside, or you can just lock yourself in. There's a vent, there's a fan, I just wanted to know, and just be completely by yourself. And there's a really great padded chair with hinges that slides from a completely alert position to a relaxed position for sleeping. In this particular case, we got Sony to lend a lot of equipment, so it was a very expensive Inspirotainer because of the equipment, but in reality the price is around $1,700. Depending on how many would get produced, would be $1,700. And the size is such that it could go into any kind of office. The deal that we worked out with the designers was that MoMA doesn't have the ownership of the projects. We wanted to make it very clean, and at the same time we wanted the designers to give all of themselves. So MoMA doesn't have the ownership of the projects. The designers do. They can do whatever they want with them, so long as they always nominate MoMA in the captions. And if they make it into production, they could call it MoMA-tainer or whatever else, And then we told them, should you put it into production and make millions, it'd be really nice of you if you gave us a little bit of money for a design program at MoMA, But that's all. So we kept it really clean and detached. And I think that that another project that you'll see later will in fact be produced. So,
Is it self-propelled?
I'm sorry?
Is it self-propelled?
No, it's on casters, but it's very easy to move. Actually, the ones that you see at the airports are on pallets. They for forklifts, but this one we put on casters. Very easy to move. I can move it by myself. On the right-hand side, you're seeing the second commission. The briefing for that commission was about the interface of all of our scheduling programs and data storing programs. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Outlook. I'm talking about the Palm Pilot. I'm talking about the Filofax. Pretty much ever since the Filofax was introduced, there hasn't been really much improvement done to scheduling programs. Usually you're able to link an appointment with an address, and you're able to zoom in, see the week, or see the day, or see the month, maybe see the year. But that's pretty much it. I felt that there was a need for a new scheduling program that gives us a sense of the intensity that we're devoting to various parts of our life and to various projects, something that lets the zooming be a little more controlled and a little more personalized, and that enables us to not become too discouraged when we miss appointments. It's just something that tells you you're working a little too much. No wonder you're missing that appointment. So with that in mind, I went to the MIT, to the Media Lab, and I spoke with John Maeda. I spoke with John because I knew that he could count on great students that are already quite versed into dealing with interfaces, especially interfaces that have to deal with great amounts of language and data. And at the same time, I knew that he could count on people like Joe Paradiso to really come up with really good technology, input technology. And also, John being involved, I could count on good design, which, it's MoMA, so it's never an afterthought. And on the right-hand side, you see what the students of MIT Media Lab came up with. It's a great interface. It's still too artistic. It's not a real product yet, but of course, it needs a little more work. It needs a lot more work, I think. But it was a spiral. It was an installation that gave you 3 different views of the same interface at 3 different sizes. And these were the input devices. The 3 rings were the 3 Cartesian coordinates, and then you had a Palm Pilot-like device that you could move 3-dimensionally and also that you could use with a keyboard to really master the data on the screen. Now, in the exhibition, people were having fun, but they didn't really know what they were doing. And that was the problem. But I think that with more work, it could become a really great product. And no matter what, I think it's a product that's needed. Even if it's not this one, I think that it's time for a new scheduling and data storing interface. I don't know if you know, but there are so many scientists that are devoting time to how we store data. And I was laughing because the latest discovery is that the best way to store data when you have so many files in the computer is just the way they come in, they get stored. And if you have to retrieve it, it's important it goes to the top of the pile, period. And I was like, wow, look at this. You know, it took us 10 years to find out that the best way is the usual chaos and personalization. By the way, if you want to ask me questions while we're going, so you don't forget about the different prototypes, don't have any problem. Yes, Rebecca.
For that last one, how did the interface work? What did you do?
That was what was quite difficult. In a way, you were basically just piloting it, not doing much. You could not input your data. That was the problem. So you could just, you were navigating it, but not really inputting the data. That's why I felt it was a little incomplete. But in theory, that Palm Pilot would be the way you also input your own data and then zoom in and out. The way I had envisioned it was a color coding, and then at the beginning we were talking about a cloud of information that in a way gave you a geography of your data, like a visible geography of your data. And of course it's something that you had to get used to, but in a way, remember when you had your old agenda, the paper one that was not the Filofax? Well, you had your own color coding and your way to do scribbles on the sides, and you would remember where there would be a special tear in the page. You would remember that was where you had your friend's phone number. So in a way, it was a way to put that into a computerized and portable interface. But it didn't get to that yet. Yes?
Is it 3 input devices, or those are 3 coordinates?
They were here, no, 3 input devices, each with three coordinates. But it was like an installation for the exhibition. In reality, you shouldn't have those rings. Mm-hmm. Yes?
The concept of interface, what does it mean to you?
Why don't we ask Rebecca? What does it mean? To me? Oh, no, you're asking to me.
Yes.
Interface means anything that has to deal with the way we input. The interface is the face between us and the machine in that case. So it's a way to use a machine more efficiently by making the machine's language more usable by me. Huh? What did you say?
And vice versa?
And vice versa? I don't know. I think the machine can deal with me better than I can deal with it. Yeah, so I think it's kind of a universal. It's not really only to me. That's the universal definition.
No, it's not so universal. I once got fired from a job because I interpreted an interface as something that joins two objects. My boss interpreted it as something that separates two objects.
And he fired you for that? I hope you fired him.
It's a damn good job, too.
Gosh. Yeah, it's better that you're good riddance. That's what you should say. So this is the container, the cargo container in its normal version. See, with the forklift holes. And this was one of the first prototypes that MIT did, very small, not prototypes actually, little models of the screen and the way they wanted to do the installation. As you walked into the exhibition, you would bump into Mindspace, the third commission. Now, as I told you, the word got out, and I selected many of the designers. I selected 5 out of the 6 commissions. But this commission, actually, the designers came to me, and it was quite fortuitous. It was 3 different proposals coming from 3 completely different offices and proposing exactly the same thing, in a way. One office was Architectural Studios, which is an architectural firm that's based in San Francisco, Washington, and New York that is specialized in office design, that it's Sun Microsystems and many other offices around the United States. The second firm was Digital Image Design, DID, which is, as the title says, it's a digital design company based in New York City. And the third was Hayworth, which is a big manufacturing company. It manufactures office furniture, and in particular their design division, which is a very good one. The 3 different proposals all reflected a common objective, which was that of using some of the paradigms of cognitive science, in particular attention and memory, to design a new workspace. Now, at the beginning of the commissions, at the briefings, I was telling everybody, I want a real product. I don't want any science fiction. I want something that can be realized tomorrow. We're on real technology. Even if it's not already available, it could be available in 5 years, but it's got to be real. And when I was getting the proposals were more idealistic. And at the beginning, I wanted to kind of stifle them and tell them, no, make it real, make it real, make it real. And then I realized that instead, some of the ideas could carry us much further by being more idealistic and not that pragmatic. But I have to say that any one of the objects that you'll see could be, in reality, done tomorrow, with the exception of this one. But this one is called Mindspace, and it's a desk that should, in theory, learn about your priorities and remind you about those priorities. In a way, by supplementing the work of a real assistant. The way it does that is because it has a topographic map on the surface of the desk. And the surface is not completely horizontal. It's also curved, and it has parts that come up. So the desk has all this topography on it, and depending on where you put different projects, and by means of a camera, it learns which of the projects and which of the things you're doing are more important to you. And it reminds you about what you should look at and what you should be putting your attention on by signaling with light and by making circles around the things that are important. Now, however crazy this seems, the three teams were able to make it really happen with the simulation of a program. And I don't know whether this could really happen in reality immediately. Maybe, Rebecca, you could tell us more about it. You know, I consider Rebecca the real expert in here, not me. And, but in this case, it really worked, and people were able to input and to try some of the possibilities of the desk. Of course, this was a complete concept and not even a working model. It was a concept even because it's unrealistic to think that everybody can have a desk of that size and of that shape. But once again, the idea that this could happen even in smaller scale in the future, it could provide a new door into new discoveries. So it was pretty interesting. The screen that you see here on top is made with that special glass that Viracon first patented, that now is made also by 3M. It's actually plexiglass, and it has LCD inside, so it can become opaque or translucent. When it was introduced, it was really funny. I had it in Mutant Materials, and then a few months later, a bar in New York City did the doors of the restrooms with that. So you would get inside, the door would be completely translucent, and people would freak out, and then they would go in, and they would turn the lock on, and it would become opaque. Basically, what happens is that when it's switched on, all the LCDs go in the same direction, so it becomes translucent. You turn it off, and they just go at random, so it becomes opaque. So it's a way to modulate your privacy, which is also a big issue, as you all know, about workspaces. Then you would get, well, this is, a car designer was involved in designing the desk. As you can see, they had the most beautiful sketches in the world. Now, some of these projects are really lavishly produced, and I didn't have all this money, so some of the companies really jumped on the occasion and put a lot of effort and money into these projects. So that's what I'm talking about using MoMA's clout and authority to do something good, you know, to do something new. It really works. I was surprised myself. You know, you don't really know what's gonna happen, but people jumped and really gave so much, and I'm so thankful to many of these designers because they made it into a great show. You'll see. I'll show you afterwards. Some of the best projects. As I told you, there were also many products in the exhibition. And some of the products were really interesting. This is a product by Snow Crash. Snow Crash is a company that's Scandinavian, started out being Finnish, now it's half Swedish. And this is called Net Surfer. It was introduced about 5 years ago at the time when there was a lot of lyricism and poetry about the internet and the dot-coms, and everything seemed like it was a new way of living. And so this was supposed to be a workspace. The computer would go on top of the little desk. The CPU would go in here. You would have the keyboard there, and you would be working as if you were surfing or driving a Formula One. It was the Formula One version of a normal desk. And it's still in production. I mean, it's quite a great desk, but it's more of a video game console than it is a real desk, as you can imagine. And other products, you know, this is a prototype. As I told you, there were both prototypes and products. This is one of my favorite. As I told you, Hayworth, the furniture manufacturer, has a great design division. And this prototype was produced by the design division. It's not weird, it's not odd that Jeff Reuschel, the head of the division, proposed a desk based on attention and memory, because that's what their department does all the time. They try to develop new ways of working, new configuration for a desk, based on the way we do work when we're not at a desk. So in this case, they had designed an amphitheater for our work. You would put all of your projects and all of your work as if you had a whole theater around you, and then you would have this tricycle with a little table on which you would have your portable computer or whatever you need, or you would take your notes. And it's funny to think that it would be meetings in which all these people would get with their tricycles, you know, just like gathering at one point. It's quite a beautiful one. Another parenthesis about the sponsorship of the exhibition. I'm giving you all these practical details because I know that people usually are interested in them. The main sponsors of the exhibition were actually five. Knoll, Herman Miller, Steelcase, and Hayworth. So 4 competing companies all came in with the same amount of money. And then the Xerox Foundation, and then Peter Norton, and then some other sponsors with less money came in too. But what is interesting is that another big debate that has happened in New York, and I'm sure you've got big echoes and also problems here about it, is that when exhibitions are funded by people that have an interest in the exhibition. Now, when it comes to design, excuse me, who else should sponsor it? You know, I mean, it's not easy to find somebody that decides, for the same reasons that I was telling you before, that design doesn't have that vitamin role yet. It's not easy to find companies that put money into it. But what you can do is you can choose your sponsors savvily and make sure that their product is good enough as to get into the exhibition. So in a way, you curate the exhibition first, and then you ask many companies and not only one to come in. And also what's interesting is that there are many companies that are in the exhibition that didn't give a dime. So you just by making pluralism a datum in the exhibition, you kind of avoid that moralism that has happened with Armani, for instance, or with the Chanel exhibition. I'm sure you heard about all these different debates that happened in New York. In the exhibition were also some reconstructions of parts of offices. This one in particular is the reproduction of part of an office of Hiroaki Kitano. Kitano is the scientist in Tokyo that develops all the robots for Sony and also for other companies. So he's a robotic scientist. And he has a company, an atelier in Tokyo, that is made all of scientists and artists, so musicians and painters and sculptors and then scientists all together in this office that is really that green color, believe it or not. I mean, I would go crazy working in a space that color. It's all that color, and it has a stylized Mickey Mouse ears motif that is used in the thresholds of the door and everywhere. So there's this mixture of really high-tech knowledge and just experience that you cannot find and expertise that you cannot find anywhere, and playfulness. And the office is in Tokyo on Omotesando. Omotesando is one of the busiest streets in town. It's the one that's 24 hours. You know, there's always cafes, there's a lot of life going on. And what was interesting is to show to expose the New York public to another way of working that is very odd for them, that is very odd for the public, but at the same time that is very efficient for the people that work there. And Kitano came and explained, you know, he was there, somebody was there very often explaining how the office worked, and there were different parts of the robots. There were also other offices that were kind of reproduced in the exhibition with people explaining how they work, which was, I think, an important part of the involvement of the public. Now this, even though I shouldn't say this was my favorite commission, it was so beautiful. It was everybody's favorite commission in a way. The commission, the briefing was, let's pretend there's nothing you can do about it. You have a cubicle and you are in an awful office. There's nothing you can do. You can hear all of your coworkers. You cannot have a private phone call. Life really sucks, and there's nothing you can do about it. How can you make that cubicle become a little more livable? And to work on this, I went to a Japanese designer because being Japanese, he would know about both collective work and about the pressure of discipline, and also about good manners within that kind of environment, but also he had worked for a long time in the United States, so he would understand this longing. And I had known him for a long time, Naoto Fukasawa, from the company called IDEO, that you might know, based in San Francisco, Palo Alto, and many other places. I told him about this, and he came up with this fabulous, fabulous installation. It was at the end of one of the galleries, and it was this white room with 3 white tables, 3 white chairs, and 3 screens on top of the tables. And the installation was called Personal Skies, and then The Chair with the Soul Left Behind. The personal skies are these screens that at the time the exhibition was organized seemed impossible, but now, you know, with the new screens that don't cost much, that you can have almost full wall screens, could really be feasible. On this screen above your desk, you could call the sky that you would want. You know, in this installation, it was called via a white telephone on the desk. But in reality, you could store the files of the skies that you want in your computer. Friends can send them to you. So you're in your cubicle and life is terrible, but you can have a sunset in Hawaii above you, or a storm over Paris, or dawn in Jamaica. You know, whatever you wanted, you could just look up and there would be like a hole in the roof above you, and freedom. And the chair with the soul left behind is that white chair that you see there. Basically, it took on, via camera, the texture and the image of what you're wearing and magnify it so that people can see from afar that it's you, it's your space. You really identify it. And then when you get up, the image lingers on for a little bit, and then it solarizes and vaporizes away. So that's the chair with the soul left behind. And people could really interact with it, and there would be lines to try it. It was really quite beautiful. The exhibition was divided quite loosely. Did you have any questions about that? No. The exhibition was divided quite loosely into 3 regions, one can say. One was the official office, so the office, which is a devoted space in a devoted building where you go and you have your desk, and you have meetings with your co-workers, and it really is the official office. The second section would be the nomadic office, so what it means to work on the go, to be traveling and still trying to be working. And the third section was the domestic office, the part where you would try to work at home or have your workspace at home. Now, the reason why I'm saying loosely divided is because some of these areas really come together. I was talking to Jay Chiat, you know, who was the founder. He's the founder of Chiat Day that now became TBWA, and he's well known for having experimented a lot with office spaces. He's the one that did here in Venice the building with the binoculars, you know, and that Frank Gehry designed. And then in New York, he did this famous, infamous office space down in Wall Street by South Street Seaport. That was designed by Gaetano Pesce. I'm sure you've seen pictures of it. It was designed in '95, and it was that office that was all colorful plastic, like a blast of plastic, and it was famous because people didn't have offices and desks anymore. They would come in the morning, and they would have their locker, and then they would put the stuff in the locker, then they would check out a portable computer, check out a cell phone, you know, with a local area network, and then they would find a place to work, you know, somewhere. And it was just this great space that was all targeted to the Generation X perceived desires, but in reality was a complete failure. Now, there's not much difference between that and nomadic working. You know, when you have a laptop and a cell phone and nowhere to go, or, you know, that's nomadic working in a way. So it's kind of a loose situation. By the way, Jay Chiat is a great person, and we had a big symposium for the exhibition. And I invited him to talk about his failures, you know, his mistakes, actually, not his failures, in office design. And he was so great. He probably gave one of the best contributions. It was him in conversation with Bruce Mao about the way they organize offices. It was quite good. Anyway, this is an example from the nomadic office section. So working on the go. You know very well what that means. You're dragging your laptop around. If you don't have enough money to buy yourself a Vaio, it's heavy. It takes space. And you always have the wrong plug. And you can't find AOL where you are. Or the server at home is too slow. I mean, you name it. There's always something, right? So traveling and working is about frustration most of the time. It's about stress. And it's about finding a place where you're comfortable, where you can replicate a good work environment, and you can turn on your bubble, your Worksphere and make it really efficient. This project is by a student of Parsons in New York. I always look at what schools do because very often students come up with some of the best ideas. They don't have a concept about the production world yet, and therefore they're kind of untamed. And in this case, Eliron Coronio, the student that's sitting in it, designed this pretty great piece that has two side doors of trucks and a seat, and that is meant to be a seat for semi-public spaces, actually public spaces. It makes your space semi-public, but it's in public spaces such as airport, waiting rooms of stations, everywhere, where you want to have your privacy, but at the same time, there needs to be a security system in place that checks what you're doing. You can't be completely secluded. And this was in the exhibition, together with this other pretty great invention by Jenny Pineus, a student from Sweden, that said, sometimes to turn on your Worksphere, you just don't want to see other people's faces. You got enough of seeing people's faces. They distract you, so what you do is you take your head cocoon out of your bag and you just wear it. It's not really a New York thing, but, in Sweden it works. And there's even a chair version. Should you want to just have a little bit of work done in the middle of the street, you have your cocoon chair. So I was just rich of these different propositions. But this was the commission for nomadic work. It's Martí Guixé. Martí Guixé is a great designer from Barcelona. And he is well known for having designed weird things, well, the camper stores, the camper shoe stores around the United States, that's fine. But also he's designed a lot of different foods, and you know how sensitive I am to the people that design foods. He's designed the techno tapas, for instance. You know that tapas usually are always oily, they drip oil, so you always have to have a fork and a little plate. And instead he found a way to carve an onion and put, techno tapas, basically you just go like this and it's the real tapa. And then he designed this great tape. He says that playing soccer in Europe is a very important thing, but what's really fun when you're a child is when you don't have the ball, and so you just take some paper and you put it together and that becomes the ball. So he designed this adhesive tape that is shaped like, the hexagons, the white and black hexagons that are on the soccer balls. So you just wrap it around your ball of paper and that becomes an official soccer ball. He always has a way of designing things that come from outer space because they're so simple. We have a way of saying in Italy is when you discover something that's been there forever and it's like the most ancient wisdom, you're discovering hot water, So he's always discovering hot water, but in such a way that is so revealing. So that's why I looked at him for this particular problem, because I thought that for working on the go, I needed somebody with a different mind. And that's exactly what I got, but not at the beginning. At the beginning, Martí, when I gave him the commission, said, okay, good. I'm going to try and see what it really means. So he set out on this travel around Eastern Europe, staying 2 days in each city in the wintertime, so it must have been dreadful, and staying 2 days in each city with his computer and just making notes about what it meant and how stressed out he was and so on and so forth. Great. Then I got this diary and I couldn't even read it. It was too painful. And he said, well, I am setting out to design, suspense, a new computer. I'm like, oh my God, I was so disappointed. So I decided not to interfere, let him do things. And then after 2 weeks, he called back and said, no, it didn't work. I'm not designing the computer. I said, oh, great. What are you designing? He said, I'm designing pills. I'm like, okay. And, well, this is what I got. His idea is that working and traveling, as we said before, is about stress. So he set out to try and minimize the stress by making a series of pills that help you just travel well. In a way, they are what your grandmother would tell you. They are good suggestions, they're good advice, they're common sense ideas, they're common sense actions. And they're pills that you take to be able to prompt yourself to do things well. For instance, this pill switch on and off, it's a way for you to really pay attention when needed. Even if you're jet lagged, no matter what, you pay attention. It's made of aluminum, and you put it in your mouth, and it reacts with the fillings in your teeth. So you you get a jolt, Or there's another pill, the concentrate everywhere pill. It's just a pill that, it's a pill that you just roll around your mouth and it has edges. So, it just makes you concentrate because you have this thing going around your mouth, just like that. Nothing more than that. Or there are these great pills here The culture bridge, feel comfortable everywhere. You've been traveling, you're in coach class, the food is disgusting on the airplane, but you have these little pills that are the spices from where you come from. So you just, you pulverize them on the food and they make you feel good. They make a culture bridge with home. Then you have other pills that enable you, for instance, it's very important when you travel that you have an interaction with strangers wherever you are, and it's important that you learn from them. It's about learning about other cultures, but sometimes, you've been traveling, maybe your breath is disgusting, so basically the pill to enable you to talk to strangers is just a breath freshener, because it makes you feel more comfortable, and then you can really have an interaction. It's all these things that seem silly, seem funny, but when you put them all together, they become almost like a manual of how to travel. And if you're able to travel this way and to do what you have to do at every different time, first of all, you don't need these pills anymore. And second of all, you're going to be much more prepared for any bad thing that might happen with your computer and the server at home. So it was really interesting. And in the exhibition, we had 2 vending machines, because that's how these pills supposedly will be sold, in vending machines all over the world, in railway stations and airports. Then we would have on the wall, Martí did sketches of everything that each pill does and the reaction that you get. So it was really beautiful, a beautiful display on walls. And then you would have these cards that would be almost like instruction cards and that you could take away with you. So people would go away with these pills. And in particular, the vending machines had these pills. One of the ideas was that the pills are also about remembering to really pack your stuff well. So you could even buy your own underwear from these vending machines. You know how sometimes you have underwear that is packed and wrapped in plastic envelopes? Well, in his case, he had made an envelope of starch. So you would put this big thing in your mouth and dissolve the starch, and then you would take out your sock would come out of your mouth. So it was just very whimsical, but also very deep. In a way, it was one of the hardest commissions to explain, but one that had immediate recognition and fun for people. This was the last commission, the domestic workplace. And it's interesting because it's one of those that sparked the biggest debate. The exhibition was really amazing in terms of getting responses and being covered by the press and people writing. I had put up, before the exhibition opened, I forgot to tell you, I had put a survey on the website at MoMA. So people, since, starting 8 months before the exhibition, people could send, could respond to this questionnaire that didn't have any statistical value because it's only on the MoMA website, so it doesn't work as a sample, but it was very important for me for the exhibition. There were various questions, and some of them were, what would you improve in your workplace, if you could, for instance. And what I did is I took many of the responses and I put them in the current website. It's still up if you want to see it. You go moma.org and then you go exhibitions past 2001 and you find Workspheres, or you do the search, that's easier, and you still find them. The whole website is done with Post-its. It's quite nice, and it has some of the quotes from the survey that come up. Anyway, there was a lot of debate, but both in the press, in particular one article from, I think it was USA Today or something like that, and some of the people at the exhibition reacted very strongly about this domestic workplace because it doesn't keep the separation. It doesn't stress the separation between work and non-work. The person that I called to work on working at home, oh my God, I'm saying work so many times, if anybody has counted, is Hella Jongerius. Hella Jongerius is a Dutch designer. And she's great because she's able to take very far away extremes and put them together in a synthesis that is often amazing. For instance, she's able to take a very high-tech material and work it using very low-tech crafted techniques. Or she went once to Nigeria and she saw the three-legged high-back chair that is typical of the tradition of that part of Africa, and she got struck by lightning when she saw it, just like many designers before her, but instead of replicating the chair, she was able to digest it through a Western Europe mind and make it into a foldable stool of carbon fiber and how how do you call the thing that you do overalls for surfing? Anyway, she was able to translate it into, gosh, I can't remember. Say it again? The elastic fiber. Neoprene, thank you. Sorry. And carbon fiber and neoprene stool that is definitely respectful and pays homage to that tradition, but is a new object. So she's always able to make this synthesis happen. And I thought that she would be the best to work on the two spheres that are today kept separate as much as possible. If you look at the articles or books about working at home, they tell you to keep things separate. A different room, in the garage, so you have to go across the garden, take a walk around the block in the morning to simulate a commute, change your clothes when you go into your home office, put your equipment on timer so after 8 o'clock at night you cannot turn the computer on until the day after. You know, all this kind of advice that is given to you is to keep the two spheres separate. Hela's idea is, no, we've been trained enough at this point. We're much more responsible about our lives. Remember, that's kind of a European, it's a European perspective. In Germany, they're working 4 days a week. They're keeping productivity up by working less. They are valuing, I'm just giving it as an example, but it's a very European perspective. We know when to work and we know when not to work, so we don't need to keep that separate. We don't need to amputate part of our apartment so as to have this ugly IKEA furnished, well, IKEA is good, but you know, that kind of sad home office furniture, because the big manufacturers have not tooled themselves up for home furniture yet. They only cater big companies that can buy a lot of offices. So why amputate our apartment and keeping space only for that? Let's put everything together. And that's what she did. She designed this beautiful example of a home in which you can work or not work at the same time everywhere in a very comfortable and beautiful way. For instance, she did this bed that's called Bed in Business that is equipped with 2 screens for his and hers or his and his, whatever, but it's just like separate. And where one can work or not work at the same time, and everything is really comfortable. The mouse is a pillow, the keyboard is a pillow, the 2 loudspeakers, left and right, are pillows, and everything is soft and comfortable and easy. Or these are the power patches. The power patches are computers that are embedded in silicon gel and then covered, in this case, with the synthetic fur. And you can work on them as, remember when you were watching TV, when you were like a teenager, belly down, legs dangling behind like this, you know, that's how you can work on your computer. Then you have the weekend dinner. The weekend dinner is a beautiful linen tablecloth with the keys embroidered in it and 2 cameras. So you can talk to your partner, and at the same time while you're talking, let your partner see what you're talking about. Like, I've seen this great work of art. It's projected on the other side. So it's about putting together work and non-work in a seamless way and letting people make their choices. This is a better shot of the Bed in Business, and this is in particular the mouse. You know, the mouse pillow. What you see there, you know, this part that you see here that seems so mysterious, it's what you find into any mattress. It's the part that covers the spring. You know, that's what I like about Hela. Who would know, you know? She probably got on a mattress and she saw this and she said, it's really beautiful, let's use it. So this is one of the first prototypes. You see here one of the loudspeakers. And this is the bed as it's been made in the exhibition. And this is a better view of the power patch. With the silicone gel and the screen and the fake fur. And this that made everybody laugh is the weekly dinner. The weekly dinner is, well, you see what it is. You know, it's, as opposed to the weekend dinner, the weekly dinner is solitary. And it's about doing your own work and being by yourself, but still being able to have leisure and work at the same time. So it was particularly interesting to see what the people's reactions were to this one installation. And it made me think that there's a lot of work still to do about workspaces, but in particular, what is important is to in a way, produce enough products as to let people make their own choices and be really flexible, which seems to be the direction that manufacturers are going toward. It really seems that way. If you have noticed, the latest products that have been put into production, for instance, by Herman Miller, are about flexibility. And I'm talking about Herman Miller because Herman Miller is in a way responsible for the current state of the affairs, for the cubicle. You know, I say it with a smile, but in 1964, Herman Miller, I think it's 64, am I correct? 63, 64? Herman Miller introduced the Action Office that was designed by a team that was led by Robert Probst. And the Action Office was what then became corrupted into the cubicle. It was the first time that there were partitions, and that partitions could be set freely within the real estate shell that you would have. So the usual refrain is that it's the first time that designers had power over the walls. You know, you hear it all the time. The problem is that the revolutionary good idea became the cubicle after a while. You know, when you have, it always is like this. You have a first strong idea, and then it gets diluted in time. And Herman Miller has now come up with the resolve system, which is a way to make, instead of the cubicle, a petal. You know, there's a central column, and then the offices are petals around it. So there's a lot of production that is geared towards flexibility. And Herman Miller is also the company that is doing more cheaper products that are more geared to the home office. Anyway, you know, I don't want to take all my time by telling you all these things. There's so many things that I could tell you about all the different facets of the exhibition. What is important is that it's been quite great to see that it succeeded in what it was meant to do with the exhibition. It was not meant to create solutions, spark revolutions, give answers. It was really meant to start more thinking, to spark more thinking, and that's exactly what happened. There are designers and students that have used the exhibition as an excuse to do more work. I know that there are theses that have been initiated by the exhibition, and of course, since it is a matter that really is important to everybody, it's an exhibition that touched people that are not normally touched by design, which I think is one of the important tasks that we all have in this room and outside, you know, to really make design be influential in the right way, not in the form of decoration, not in the form of applied art per se, but making it be really substantial in people's lives and in people's choices. And I thank you, and I would like to ask you if you have any questions. Thank you very much. So I hope I haven't worn you out. Just ask me questions if you have any about the exhibition or other matters if you want. Yeah?
Is this exhibition currently going on right now?
No, the exhibition is over. The question is the exhibition is going on. The exhibition is over. It ended April 22nd. And we decided not to have a tour because it's too complicated to travel because of the installation. But since we let the designers retain ownership of their products, I just got word from the Design Museum in London that they're going to have a few of the installations there, which is great. So it might still go around.
And which exhibition is going on right now?
Which exhibition is going on right now? Design, none. But architecture on June 20th will open a gigantic Mies van der Rohe show. Mm-hmm. Yes?
I had a Diego designer as part of your advisor.
Yeah?
I was just wondering whether the ergonomic aspect of it was like kind of...
Okay, the question is about the
reflected
behavioral
on that.
designer and the ergonomics. Well, that's the funny thing. You just touched on it. You know, ergonomics was the big issue in the 70s. And the big issue now is behavior. And that's because so many people worked so seriously on ergonomics. You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of being the physical thing, the physical aspects now have been studied. And the suggestions and directives have been given to the manufacturers. So now we're moving to the behavior and the psychological part. I didn't address ergonomics in the exhibition because so much work has already been done. I talked about it in the catalog. But right now, if you talk about chairs, if you look at chairs, for instance, which in a way are the furniture, the office furniture that is closer to the ergonomics studies, right now there's basically 3 ranges of chairs that are 3 price ranges. All of them know very well what ergonomics is. Some implement it better than others. There's the $150 range, the $400 range, and the $850 range, basically. The $850 range is the Aeron chair, is the Freedom chair, is all those chairs that are really comfortable. The $400 is the ones that have a few less levers, and so it's basically that. The most important teaching of ergonomics is that you should be able to move as much as possible. Staying in the same position is bad. Hence, all the different articulations and casters and everything else. So that's the most important thing. And basically, everything else, I mean, it's much more than that, but everything else has been really digested and understood by most manufacturers, and they apply it as much as they can according to the price range of the product.
I was just wondering that the keyboard tray there and the bed in
I'm
business, the keyboard tray right there,
Yeah.
and the bed in business, whether that aspect has been reflected.
I don't think that Hella thought
Yeah.
about ergonomics at all. She wanted to make a point, not to
Okay.
make a product, so I don't think she studied ergonomics in that case.
Would you speak a moment about what's implicit here, which is a new role for the museum, instead of a place to honor work from the past, an activist role in helping create the future?
Well, as I told you, it's not the first time. I wish I were the first, but thank God I was not. I think it's very, if you think about it in perspective, when you're into something or you look at something like a museum, sometimes you lose perspective, but when you're in it, you realize that people really listen to you, and when you ask for something, they really do it. And so it kind of becomes automatic. You realize that you are in a place that has a lot of clout and a lot of authority, and you realize that you know the best designers in the world, and you realize that would work for you if you ask them. So it kind of becomes natural. Besides the low-cost furniture competition in 1948, there's been many other examples. One of the funniest ones is in 1976. The curator was Emilio Ambas, and he commissioned a lot of designs for taxi cabs in New York. That was fun. I mean, maybe less socially involved, but certainly useful.
Thank you.
Of course, there was precedent for this, but it was 70 years ago when no one questioned the role of the museum in presenting the works that it did, and now, of course...
So you know that I can't understand you. What did you say? Who questioned?
Well, 70 years ago when they had the architecture exhibit, the concept of modern was something different as well.
Oh, yeah.
And now the museum is making the facility in PS1 because they recognize there's a little bit of problem presenting a history of the modern and then moving forward. I wonder if you have similar difficulties presenting a history of design and moving forward. Following on his question.
It's a really good question. That adjective, modern, is our luck and our damnation, as you can imagine, because there are 6 departments in the museum, and some departments are really canonized, that existed forever in people's minds, painting and sculpture, drawings, and you know what modern is there. I mean, you know at least what it was. And then there are other departments that are modern by definition because they did not exist before modern times, modern with a capital M, such as photography, film, and design, if you think of design the way we think about it. So it's difficult to deal with that adjective. I'm going to talk only about the collection of architecture and design. In that collection, the Barry Center, the point of departure of everything is Mies van der Rohe for architecture and the damn Bauhaus for design. And that's it. When you have a ground zero, then you know how to proceed. Thereafter, the definitions of modern become almost personal. I have my own working definition, and I push it all the time. And it's a definition that is almost a paraphrase of what an art critic, Clement Greenberg, once said, which is that modern is everything that does not hide the process of its making. So it's about a certain honesty of purpose, a certain economy of thought. It's about really, when we always use the the example of the egg as something that has all internal and all external forces that are balanced into this shape that is eternal and perfect, but not perfect because it is symmetrical, perfect because it's so well thought and well produced. So that's what I use as a working definition. That's why the normal kind of postmodernism, the Memphis-style postmodernism, is something that I don't think belongs in the collection, while Shiro Kuramata kind of postmodernism does. So it becomes an adjective that you have to continually justify and explain, which is a good exercise. And that also is completely different when applied to different departments. For instance, when I did that exhibition that we were talking about that was called Matter, it was part of a big cycle of exhibitions of which I was one of the directors, about the collection of MoMA from 1970 to today. And it was really interesting to work on that cycle, because we all sat down and we discussed this. You know, I was working with Kirk Varnado, who's the chief curator of painting and sculpture, and Josh Siegel, who's an assistant curator of film. So the three of us would sit down and say, what is modern to you? Now, that's quite valuable. And for instance, we discovered that photography has never had any qualms about postmodernism. If you think about it, Cindy Sherman is pure postmodernism, and the photography department has been acquiring all of her film stills without any problem, while the architecture and design is the most bigoted of all the departments. Like, there's no way that anything Memphis-like would ever come into the collection, and postmodernism is really considered almost like the Antichrist, you know? So it's very interesting. It's a lucky thing to have that adjective, because we always know what to do and which mistakes to make, in a way, and we can always question ourselves. Did I answer you, or did I just expose to you my doubts?
No, you did, but if you set say the beginning of the museum in this modern age, where there was also the concept of style very strongly tied to it, and now you say, okay, the museum's moving forward with two versions of modern, a historical version. I would
say more 10, but...
Okay, a historical version and what's happening today. Let's break it down to those two things. Modern is a style from the past, and what's happening today.
Well, see, I don't think that modern is a style. To me, the collection was started in 1934. But our oldest piece is from the 18th century. It's a Wedgwood piece. And as far as I'm concerned, we could have also some ancient Greece pieces.
Yeah.
So the Barry Center is the Bauhaus because of the moment when MoMA was founded. But a Barry Center is something that is the center and goes in all directions, in a way. And also the shape doesn't necessarily need to be circular. So even though I'm becoming a little too metaphorical here. But I don't consider the Bauhaus the end and the beginning of it all. I just consider it a term of comparison.
Well, that's what I was wondering, is at this point, then, would you begin to go back more, say, to the Industrial Revolution, to include in your scope?
If I had to go back more, well, Wedgwood is already before the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century, but if I could really, I would go back completely. But that would be almost impossible, in the sense that you have, as we said before, to set your own limits, you know, because otherwise if you try to be everything, then you're in trouble. So I acknowledge that modern has existed since the beginning of times, and I acknowledge that the collection reflects a museum that was founded in 1929. So in a way, once you know exactly who you are and what you're doing, then you can also, you know what you're not. You understand what I'm saying? But if I could, I would go back really to ancient Greece, and I would include also crafts. If I were sure that people understood what design is and what modern is, then I would really go into crafts, I would go into all continents, and I would go back to ancient Greece. Other questions? Yeah? Yeah. Oh, no, he wanted to ask another.
Well, yeah, I had one more then.
Yeah, sure.
Since we have you here.
Yeah, first camera, and then we'll get to you. Okay.
Well, this exhibit you showed was conceived 5 years ago.
Yeah, well, conceived, no, it was just thought.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it was executed, and you learned things from it, and every day we learn new things. And so as you think about the exhibit 5 years from now, how is Workspheres 2 going to be conceptually framed differently than the first one?
I don't even know if it would happen. Maybe 5 years from now, maybe the problem will be to deal with biogenetics on a more real basis. So 5 years from now might be totally different. I think that I was pretty lucky that I was able to time the exhibition now. Now this is a particular time. It's a time where we're still trying to learn how to live with the new tools that we have available. It's a strange time because there's been a lot of hype and then the hype kind of fell down. So this is meant to be a timely exhibition, and I'm not sure that it could happen 5 years from now. It was him.
This will be the last one.
Okay, yes, sir.
Most of the exhibits that were shown in the exhibit, how they were how they were designed by the designers. Did they work in conjunction with like mechanical engineers to actually develop?
I'm sorry.
Did they work in conjunction with like mechanical engineers or engineers to develop the actual prototypes?
Well,
or did they...
are you talking about the commissions?
Yeah.
Or you're talking about? Well, yeah. In some cases, Hella, the domestic space didn't really need much engineering. She got the bed from Auping Beds. That's a Dutch firm. And they did for her what she needed. And then I introduced her to IBM, who gave the technology, and everything else was done by hand. In the case instead of the personal skies, there was a lot of work, but it was all done in-house by IDEO. There was a team of about 15 people that they are an enormous company. So they have everything. They have both the engineering and the design in the company, so they could do everything in-house, but it was a really wide range of expertise that was going from the design itself to all the software to the engineering of the pieces, so it was really wide range.
So the majority of the commissions were done by big teams or big companies?
Not all of them. As I was telling you, some of them were big, like IDEO was big, and Mindspace, the swirl, was also big, and instead Low-Tech, the container, the two of them did it. I convinced Sony to give the equipment, but then everything was done, welding and everything was done by them. Hella did everything pretty much by herself. Mindspace was a big team. Personal Skies was a big team. The Media Lab was a big team of students, so everything done by the Media Lab. Martí Guixé with the pills, he didn't need anybody, just a model maker for the pills. Oh, well, he was not a commission. Brand Farren was not a commission, but he had, for the big Maximog, for the big truck, it was done in Germany by Thomas Ritter, who's somebody who does customized vehicles all the time. So yeah, and not to mention the products. The products, when they're on the market, you can imagine that's a gigantic team whenever there's a product manufactured.
Paola,
Right.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
One more.
One more?
In relation to Cameron's
I'm sorry?
question, what are you working on now?
What am I working on now? Right now I'm working, I announced my next show that's called Emergency. And the subtitle is When Good Design is a Matter of Life or Death. So I'm pushing the issue a little further. And I'm doing that book on foods. I really am. I'm trying to finish that.
Emergency equipment? Or?
It's about emergency shelters, emergency equipment. It's about medical instrument. It's about using really an extreme situation as the defining discriminating point for good design. So no cute chairs.
I have one question because you paused on this slide here, and that's kind of a sad fact of many of our lives. Like I eat at my machine, I wear my pajamas when I work because I don't have time to get dressed. And I'm wondering, with convergent technology and some of the things you showed, the blurs between work and life. I mean, what I consider life, not work, there's no clear demarcation. And I'm not sure if I really have a question here, except that I would really like to see if there were survey answers from other countries. When you said that in Germany people worked 4 days a week, and my stereotype cliche image of Germans is that they work 7 days a week, which is
they
what
really
I do.
No, they don't. They go trekking. They go hiking. They have 5 weeks of vacation a year, and that's because it's proven economically viable to have a better lifestyle. And to me, this is not a sad thing. This means that I'm home on my couch as opposed to being as usual out and about. So everything is so personal, but certainly different cultures have different styles of living. The taking a nap thing, for instance, which is so, which used to be, when I was growing up in Italy, used to be absolutely normal, and now it's gone. It's something that people miss, and in Spain they still do it. And there are, if you're working away from home and you can't go home for lunch, there are like little hourly hotels where you can go and take your siesta. I mean, it's really, you can learn so much from other countries about living better, so that this doesn't become a sad thing anymore. It's just like a commentary or an apostrophe or something humorous that makes you think.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.